The rain cascaded from the sky in heavy sheets as I pulled into my apartment complex, the sound of water splattering against the pavement drowning out the soft hum of my car's engine. I had spent another long day at work, and all I wanted was to retreat to my sanctuary, the little haven I had created in my small apartment. But as I approached my parking spot, my heart plummeted. The sight of my car, once a source of pride, brought a wave of disbelief crashing over me. There it was, my beloved vehicle, marred and mutilated. The paint gleamed with deep scratches, jagged lines that cut through the once pristine surface like scars on a cherished memory. The tires lay flat, a sad testament to someone's cruel handiwork. I stepped closer, my breath quickening, each inhalation a mix of fury and confusion. How could someone do this? I felt as if the ground had shifted beneath my feet, the world around me blurring into a haze of vibrant anger. I stumbled away from the wreckage of my car, my mind racing. The innocent interactions I had shared with my neighbor, Jonah, flooded back to me. Just days before, we had exchanged pleasantries in the hallway. He had offered to help me with my groceries, his friendly smile and warm demeanor disarming me. But now, all I could see was the betrayal etched in the very scratches on my car. Jonah's kindness felt like a cruel joke, a mask hiding something sinister behind it. I rushed into my apartment, the familiar surroundings providing little comfort as I fought to gather my thoughts. The chaos of the day replayed in my mind, each moment sharpening the pain of my loss. My eyes darted to the small security monitor in the corner of the room, the faint glow illuminating my face. I pressed the button, and the footage rolled into view. There he was, Jonah, unmistakably, his face clear as day, vandalizing my car with a nonchalance that sent chills down my spine. Each frame felt like a stab in the gut, the betrayal deepening with every second I watched. I felt a storm brewing inside, a tempest of confusion, anger, and an insatiable need for justice. I had always believed in fairness, that kindness would be rewarded, and malice punished. But now, the line between justice and revenge blurred. Did I want to expose Jonah for what he had done, or was I simply yearning to make him feel the pain he had inflicted on me? Staring at the screen, I felt the gravity of my emotions pulling me into darkness. I was torn, grappling with the desire to confront him, to demand answers, and the equally potent impulse to retaliate, to make him feel the weight of his actions. The questions swirled in my mind like a maelstrom. What would it take to restore my sense of justice? Did I even want to restore it, or was I craving something more primal, revenge? I could still see my car, a vivid reminder of the violation I had suffered. The damage was more than physical, it felt as if a part of me had been shattered, leaving behind a jagged hole. The need to retaliate began to consume my thoughts, pushing aside any semblance of rationality. I found myself drawing up plans in my mind, envisioning scenarios where I could expose Jonah for the fraud he truly was. But as the anger simmered, I also wondered if I was crossing a line that, once crossed, would lead me to a path I could never return from. I took a deep breath, trying to quell the tumult within me, but the fire of vengeance burned hotter. I could not ignore the truth any longer, I needed to confront the reality of my situation. With each passing moment, my resolve solidified. I would not be a victim, I would reclaim my power. Whether it was justice or revenge I sought, I was ready to find out. The rain continued to patter against the window, a rhythmic reminder that the world outside was still turning, even as my own life felt irrevocably altered. As the sun rose each day, I found myself peering through the blinds, fixating on Jonah's house. It was a strange feeling, watching someone so closely, almost as if I were a detective on a case. In those days, I became more than just a neighbor, I was an observer of every little detail. His laughter echoed through the walls, mingling with the sounds of children playing in the courtyard, and each chuckle felt like a dagger to my heart. How could he be so carefree? Did he not realize the chaos he had unleashed upon my life? Every time I saw him chatting with the other residents, my blood boiled. His easy demeanor was a stark contrast to the turmoil that churned within me. I was consumed by a need for justice, but it morphed into something darker, a thirst for revenge. I started to jot down notes in a small, tattered notebook, my thoughts spilling onto the pages like ink from a broken pen. Ideas danced in my mind, each one more elaborate than the last, each one designed to make him feel the same pain he had inflicted upon me. I began to map out his routines, noting the times he left for work and when he returned. The way he watered his plants every Wednesday afternoon became a ritual I anticipated with growing excitement. I would sit by my window, the notebook resting on my lap, as I sketched out my plans in a swirl of angry scribbles. I could almost taste the sweetness of revenge, and with each passing day, the urgency grew stronger. The idea of his downfall filled my thoughts. I imagined scenarios where I could expose him for who he truly was, the man behind the mask of friendliness. I envisioned myself cornering him in the courtyard, the other residents gathering around, eyes wide with disbelief as I revealed the truth. But I had to be careful, I couldn't let him catch wind of my intentions. The last thing I wanted was for my plans to backfire. As I plotted, I couldn't escape the gnawing feeling that I was slipping further into darkness. Late at night, as I lay in bed, the shadows of my thoughts danced on the walls. Was I truly seeking justice, or was I simply feeding my desire for revenge? The lines blurred, and with each tick of the clock, I felt the weight of my decision pressing down on me. My heart raced with anticipation and dread, the two emotions battling for supremacy. I often caught myself staring at the ceiling, contemplating the morality of my actions. Could I justify what I was planning? Was it right to drag him down to my level? My hands clenched the sheets, the fabric twisted beneath my fingers as I wrestled with my conscience. The hurt he had caused me felt like a wound that refused to heal, festering in the dark recesses of my mind. It was in those solitary moments that I questioned the very essence of my humanity. The more I watched him, the more I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. The joy I once found in simple things ebbed away, replaced by a singular focus on Jonah and his actions. My friends began to notice my distance, my laughter replaced by a tight-lipped smile that barely touched my eyes. I was becoming a stranger to myself, lost in a labyrinth of revenge that only deepened my loneliness. With each plan I concocted, I felt a thrill course through me, but it was quickly overshadowed by an insidious doubt. I wanted to believe that I was doing the right thing, but the darkness whispered that I was merely becoming the monster I sought to expose. I took solace in the idea that I was not alone in my quest, the community would rally behind me, and together we would bring Jonah to justice. Yet, deep down, I feared what would happen to me once I had unleashed my carefully crafted vengeance. What would be left of me after the dust settled? In those moments of reflection, I felt a profound sense of isolation. I was trapped in a cycle of anger and desire for retribution, a cycle that seemed inescapable. I could feel the walls of my apartment closing in, the air thick with the weight of my intentions. The world outside continued to buzz with life, but I was paralyzed, standing at the precipice of a decision that would alter the course of my existence forever. As I stood in my apartment, surrounded by the remnants of my carefully planned gathering, an electric anticipation coursed through my veins. The walls were adorned with simple decorations, streamers and balloons meant to evoke a festive atmosphere. Yet beneath that facade lay the purpose of the evening, a hidden agenda that pulsed with my unyielding desire for retribution. I glanced at the clock, counting down the minutes until the neighbors would arrive, including Jonah, the man who had turned my life upside down with a single act of vandalism. The scent of freshly baked cookies wafted through the air, a small attempt to project warmth and hospitality, even while my heart harbored bitterness. I busied myself in the kitchen, arranging the snacks and pouring drinks, but my mind was elsewhere. I could almost see the images of Jonah's face as he defaced my car, the satisfying clarity of the security footage replaying in my mind. Every laugh he shared with the other neighbors over the past few days felt like a dagger to my heart, each smile a reminder of the betrayal that lay beneath his charming veneer. As the first guests trickled in, I plastered a bright smile on my face and welcomed them, though my thoughts were consumed by the plan that loomed ahead. They mingled, exchanging pleasantries, completely unaware of the storm brewing beneath my calm exterior. Jonah arrived fashionably late, his easy demeanor instantly drawing the attention of my neighbors. He greeted everyone with his characteristic charm, a facade that made my blood boil. I watched him closely, studying the way he moved through the crowd, completely oblivious to the turmoil he had caused me. Eventually, the moment of truth approached. As the evening progressed, laughter and chatter filled the room, a stark contrast to the tempest inside me. I excused myself to set up the projector in the dimly lit corner of my living room. My heart raced as I connected my laptop, the anticipation almost unbearable. I had spent hours curating a video montage that juxtaposed clips of Jonah's daily life with the incriminating footage of him vandalizing my car. This was my moment to unveil his true colors, to strip away the mask he wore so effortlessly. With a deep breath, I returned to the gathering and engaged in small talk, my mind racing ahead to my next move. As the evening waned, I could feel an electric tension building in the air, a prelude to the storm I was about to unleash. I dimmed the lights, casting a warm glow that contrasted sharply with my intentions. The laughter faded, replaced by a curious murmur as I gestured for everyone's attention. I started the video, my heart pounding as the first images flickered to life on the screen. I watched as Jonah's daily interactions flashed by, a stark reminder of the facade he maintained. Then came the moment of reckoning, the footage of him, caught in the act of vandalizing my car. Gasps filled the room, the shock palpable as my neighbors absorbed the reality of what had transpired. Jonah's face drained of color, his expression shifting from carefree confidence to wide-eyed disbelief. I remained focused on the screen, a mix of satisfaction and adrenaline surging through me. Each reaction from my neighbors was a small victory, a confirmation that my pain was being recognized. I could feel Jonah's eyes on me, a mix of confusion and fear, and for the first time, I felt powerful. This was not just about my car anymore, it was about reclaiming my narrative and exposing the truth. As the video played on, I absorbed the reactions of those around me. The laughter and animated conversations had transformed into hushed whispers and incredulous stares. I watched as my neighbors exchanged glances, the atmosphere shifting from light-hearted camaraderie to a collective confrontation of Jonah's actions. This was my revenge, painted in vivid colors for everyone to see, and I was finally in control. But as the final frame flickered off the screen, a sense of unease settled deep within me. The exhilaration of the moment was tinged with something darker, a feeling I couldn't quite shake. I had wanted justice, but as I looked at Jonah, now cornered and vulnerable, I couldn't help but wonder if I had crossed a line. The room was silent, the weight of the revelation heavy in the air, and I stood at the precipice of something I hadn't anticipated, a reckoning that would demand more than just retribution. The atmosphere shifts dramatically as the video plays, the glow from the projector casting shadows that dance nervously across the faces of my neighbors. Jonah's face drains of color, the confidence he wore like armor during the gathering shatters as the realization hits him. The collective gasp that escapes from the crowd feels like a knife twisting in my gut, both exhilarating and terrifying. I stand there, rooted in place, a mix of satisfaction and disbelief coursing through my veins, while the room descends into silence, the weight of revelation hanging heavy in the air. Each frame plays out like a slow-motion reel of justice being served, exposing the man who stood beside me not long ago, feigning concern and camaraderie. The laughter that once filled the room dissipates, replaced by the palpable tension of betrayal. I can see the flicker of shame crossing Jonah's face, his eyes darting around, searching for an escape route that doesn't exist. In that moment, I am no longer just the victim of his petty vandalism, I am the architect of his downfall, and it feels intoxicating. There's an odd sense of empowerment surging through me as the faces of my neighbors turn toward Jonah, their expressions morphing from amusement to outrage. I watch his mouth move, words spilling out in a jumble of half-hearted justifications and desperate attempts to rewrite the narrative. He's stammering, losing his grip on the charming facade he had so carefully constructed. I can sense the tide turning, the community that once embraced him is now pulling away, their trust fractured, and I can't help but feel a rush of vindication. This is what I wanted, isn't it? To expose him for what he truly is, to reclaim my sense of safety and trust in the people around me. Yet, amidst the thrill of his humiliation, a strange unease creeps in. I remind myself that this isn't just a game of revenge, these are real lives, real consequences. I catch a glimpse of Jonah's eyes, wide and panicked, and for an instant, I see a flicker of something in him: fear, regret, perhaps even a hint of vulnerability. The thought rattles the foundations of my satisfaction, and I question whether I've crossed a line that should have remained unbroken. The video comes to an end, and the room is silent, the only sound being the soft hum of the projector as it clicks off. Jonah's shoulders slump, and without a word, he storms out of the apartment, the door slamming behind him like a thunderclap. I'm left standing amidst my neighbors, their murmurs filling the void he leaves behind, but the elation I expected to feel begins to fade. I look around, searching their faces for a reflection of my triumph, but instead, I find a mix of sympathy and unease. In this moment, the exhilaration of victory feels hollow. I wanted to see him brought low, to feel the weight of my pain lifted as I revealed his true nature. But now, as the reality sinks in, I am left grappling with the aftermath of my actions. Was it worth it? Did I truly achieve justice, or have I merely sown the seeds of more animosity and division within our community? The laughter and chatter of the gathering fade into the background as I stand there, isolated in my thoughts. The thrill of empowering myself through exposure is slowly replaced by the gnawing realization that I may have shattered not just Jonah's facade but also the delicate fabric of our neighborly ties. The very community I sought to protect now feels fractured, my actions having ensnared me in a web of moral ambiguity. The evening wears on, and as my neighbors begin to filter out, I feel a sense of disconnection. Instead of camaraderie, there's a growing rift in the air, a sense that I have altered the dynamics of our little world forever. I glance at the empty doorway through which Jonah exited, the remnants of my vengeance lingering like an uninvited guest. The satisfaction I craved slips through my fingers like sand, leaving behind a heavy sense of uncertainty. As I clean up the remnants of the party, I can't shake the feeling that I'm standing on the precipice of something greater. I've exposed Jonah, yes, but at what cost? The line between justice and revenge has blurred, and now I must navigate the fallout of my actions. The question lingers in the air like an unsung note, echoing in the silence left in the wake of Jonah's departure: what comes next? The answer eludes me, but I know one thing for certain: I am no longer the same woman who walked into this evening, and I must confront the consequences of my choices, no matter how unsettling they may be. In the days that followed the party, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me, almost like the calm after a storm. The weight of Jonah's presence had lifted, and I reveled in the quietude of my apartment. The once incessant chatter echoing in the hallways had faded, replaced by a serene stillness that allowed me to reflect on the events that had transpired. The absence of his laughter, that facade of friendliness that had concealed his true nature, felt like a victory in itself. I finally had the time and space to focus on repairing my car, which had become a symbol of my struggle and my quest for justice. As I polished the surface of my vehicle, the sun glistened off the newly applied coat of paint, and I felt a sense of closure creeping in. Each stroke of the cloth wiped away not just the scuff marks but also the bitterness that had clung to me since the incident. I breathed deeply, allowing the fresh scent of the paint to fill my lungs, as if I were inhaling a new beginning. The mechanical whir of tools and the rhythmic sound of my work created a comforting backdrop, drowning out the noise of the outside world. But as the days passed, whispers began to circulate within the walls of the apartment complex that shattered my newfound tranquility. I overheard snippets of conversations as I walked through the hallways, hushed tones and furtive glances directed my way. It was then that I learned about Jonah's attempts to retaliate, sowing seeds of doubt about my character amongst our neighbors. He was trying to tarnish my reputation, twisting the narrative to paint me as the villain in this saga, and I felt a surge of anger rise within me. The peace I had so desperately sought began to crack under the weight of his rumors. I could almost feel the shards of trust one had built with my neighbors start to splinter as I confronted the reality of Jonah's vindictive nature. The thought that he could manipulate perceptions and turn them against me ignited a fire of determination within me. I refused to let him win. I would not be the one left cowering in the shadows of his deceit. With resolve, I gathered the courage to confront my neighbors directly. I invited them to my apartment, knowing I needed to present the truth, to shed light on the darkness Jonah had attempted to cast over my life. As they arrived, I felt a mix of anxiety and steely determination. I prepared the evidence, the video footage that had once served as my weapon of exposure, and I knew I had to stand firm in the face of this new challenge. As I stood before them, the room filled with familiar faces, I explained the situation in detail. I watched as their expressions shifted from curiosity to disbelief. I laid bare the truth, the pain of betrayal, and the lengths to which Jonah had gone to destroy my sense of security. With each word, I felt the weight of my own vulnerability, but I also felt empowered. I showed them the footage, the very scenes that had once haunted me, and as the images flickered across the screen, I could see their reactions shift from suspicion to a collective understanding. The atmosphere in the room changed, and I could sense solidarity forming among my neighbors. They rallied around me, their support a balm for the wounds Jonah had inflicted. Together, we formed a united front, a community standing firm in the face of his deceit. The whispers that had once threatened to unravel my peace now transformed into conversations of support and validation. I could see Jonah becoming more isolated, his attempts to manipulate the narrative backfiring as the truth spread like wildfire through our building. In that moment, as I looked around at the faces of those who had chosen to believe me, I realized how powerful community could be. I had not only fought for my own sense of justice but had also ignited a spark of resilience among my neighbors. Together, we stood against the darkness he had tried to cast, and in that unity, I found strength I never knew I possessed. As I stood in my living room, still riding the high of my small victory against Jonah, the doorbell rang unexpectedly. I opened the door to find 2 police officers standing there, their expressions serious and somber. My heart sank. I felt a chill creep up my spine as the weight of the moment settled on my shoulders. They informed me that Jonah had been arrested for a series of petty crimes, including vandalism, and that my own case was part of their ongoing investigation. A mixture of shock and disbelief washed over me. The exhilaration I had felt just days before crumbled into confusion and guilt. I had plotted and executed my revenge meticulously, believing it was a means to reclaim my dignity. I had exposed Jonah for what he had done, but I never anticipated that my actions could lead to such dire consequences. As the officer detailed the nature of the charges, my stomach twisted in knots. Was I responsible for this? Did my quest for justice spiral into something I inadvertently contributed to? The officers left, and I was left alone, grappling with the reality that Jonah was now behind bars. The exhilaration of my revenge was tainted by an unsettling feeling, a realization that I had played a part in his downfall. I sank onto my couch, my thoughts swirling like a tempest. I recalled Jonah's laughter, his seemingly friendly demeanor, and the moments that had once convinced me that he was just a regular guy, someone I could trust. Then, as if out of nowhere, I received a text from a neighbor. It was a link to an article about Jonah's arrest. The article mentioned his history of petty crimes but also revealed something that twisted my heart. Jonah had been struggling with mental health issues for years. My fingers trembled as I read the words, and I felt the ground shift beneath me. The very man I had sought to expose was not merely a villain but someone who had been fighting his own demons. I remembered the moments of vulnerability I had dismissed, his gaze, the way he occasionally seemed lost in thought, the subtle signs of his internal battles that I had overlooked in my quest for revenge. My mind raced as I processed this new information. My heart felt heavy with an unfamiliar weight. It was empathy, creeping in like a soft wave, washing away the anger I had clung to so fiercely. Sitting in the dim light of my apartment, I realized that my desire for retribution had clouded my judgment. I had been blinded by the pain he caused me, failing to see the bigger picture. Jonah's actions were not just a reflection of his character but symptoms of deeper struggles that I had no understanding of. In my pursuit of justice, I had painted him as a monster, when in truth, he was a man grappling with his own suffering. The walls of my apartment felt like they were closing in. I was at a crossroads, torn between the exhilaration of my revenge and the dawning realization that true strength lay not in vengeance but in understanding. I had sought to reclaim my power by bringing Jonah down, but now I saw that I could elevate myself by choosing compassion over malice. In that moment, I made a decision. I would not let anger dictate my actions any longer. Jonah had hurt me, yes, but I would not allow myself to be defined by that pain. Instead, I would rise above it. I would extend a hand, perhaps not to him directly, but to those who also struggled with their own demons. I would use my experience as a catalyst for empathy, transforming my hurt into a force for good. The road ahead would not be easy, I knew that. My feelings were still raw, and the scars of betrayal would take time to heal. But I was ready to embrace this new path, one that led toward forgiveness and understanding. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. I would find the strength to rise above, not just for myself, but for others who felt lost in the colors of their own turmoil.